Hello, everyone, and welcome to another conversation with myself, Marital Bliss Unfiltered. You're welcome. Thanks for joining the conversation today. It's going to be an amazing time. We are going to be talking about, what to do before 2026. So before 2026 goals, what you need to fix. So before you set your 2026 goals, whether that's career goals, financial goals, or personal goals, I need you to pause for a moment because most people enter into a new year with new goals, but the same relationship patterns. And that's why we often see people that get frustrated. Beginning of the year, you set new year goals, and then most people get frustrated by March, or they're confused by June, and then by October they're already exhausted, and just before you know what's going on, it's the end of another year. So today, that's what we're going to be talking about. We're just going to be talking about the goals that you need to set for 2026, making sure that you include your relationship goals. So today is not about big audacious goals or plan. Today is about what needs to be fixed first, so that 2026 does not look like a recycled version of 2025. So whether you're single, married, you're dating, you're healing from heartbreak, or a relationship that's broken down, or you're rebuilding, I want you to know that this conversation is for you. So if you stay with me, I promise you that this will shift how you approach the new year. Okay, so as we approach the end of this year, like I said, everyone is talking about goals, plans, pretty much everything that matters and what to do. But what I've learned over time, though, is that you could set goals, you could have the best goals, but if your relationships are not aligned, then most of your goals will not materialize, because oftentimes you need people to achieve your goals. And if you don't have alignment in relationships, now not just romantic relationships, but in even platonic relationship with your family and with friends, oftentimes you may not be able to achieve even the best of goals that you set, because relationship is usually at the center of every part of our life. Relationship, is at the center of your peace. It's at the center of your faith, your marriage, your joy, your productivity, and everything. And then there's something that someone once said. They said that your network determines your net worth. But I believe that the quality of the relationships that you have, they determine the quality of your life. It's something that Pastor, usually says, that, be conscious of the circle that you keep around yourself, because they will determine the quality of life that you have. So today, that's what we're going to be doing. If you're new to my YouTube channel, just make sure that you go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and please don't hesitate to share this message with someone who might need it. It might bring clarity to them, and it might bring, healing, or it might bring just the direction that they need as they walk into 2026. All right, so I talked about, 5 shifts that I'm going to share with you. The first shift that I'm going to share with you is about prioritizing your relationship. Now, this is what you need to do. We live in a culture where, people celebrate being busy, right? We're always moving, we're always doing things, but busyness has slowed down, and it has oftentimes replaced presentness. Excuse me. And so, when we get so busy, we wonder why we feel disconnected from people, why we feel unseen, and why we feel misunderstood. And in romantic relationships, or even in friendships, right, or family connections, when we get too busy, what we're doing is we're not making ourselves available or even present in those moments. And what ends up happening is we lose out, right? We miss out on some great opportunities. We lose out on some beautiful moments that could really build the foundation of what would help us, really enjoy peace and joy. So if you're married and you're watching this today, I want you to know that alignment matters, and it's really important in 2026. So 2 people that are moving together in the same direction, they are not easily divided. But once they start moving in different direction, then division starts creeping in. So in 2026, what you need to do is to prioritize on your relationship. That's the first shift you need to make. Prioritize on friendship, prioritize on your family connections, prioritize on marriage, prioritize, even if you're single, prioritize on the relationships that you are going to surround yourself in. So you can't say that, you value relationship, but you never show up, right? So you have to be able to show up, in those relationships, whether regardless of what type of relationship it is. So 2026, make sure you make this intentional shift where you prioritize relationship. Like we said, the quality of relationship that you surround yourselves with, that will determine the quality of your life. The second shift that you want to make is to set relationship goals. So this is the second shift that you need to make. We plan our careers, we plan trips, we plan our finances, we plan travels, but one thing that most of us don't plan to do is we don't plan love. And if you don't plan for something, you're not able to protect it. One of my bosses, mentioned to me, some years ago that, when we set goals, at times we just mention the goals. We talk about the goal. We may write it down, but that's where we stop. But when we settle down to actually plan what that's going to look like, we're able to anticipate what may or may not happen, and we are able to protect that goal. So if we don't want to be surprised in our relationships, if we don't want to end up with chaotic relationships in 2026, then we need to set relationship goal. Now, you may ask, what sort of relationship goals do I want to set? Regardless of your marital status, regardless of the type of relationship you're looking to build, there's several goals that you can set. You can set goals about your presence, your availability, being intentional about making yourself available for those relationships, investing into those relationships. You can set goals about better communication, and this is particularly important for married couples or those that are in committed relationship. Communication is key. Without communication, silence drifts in, and that's when division starts to happen. So setting better communication, goals about better communication. You can set goals about healthier boundaries. And this is important for those that are singles. The boundaries that you set for yourself are the boundaries that others will respect. So if you don't set healthy boundaries, then it makes it easier for people to come in and out of your life as they please, right? So set healthier boundaries in 2026. That can be your relationship goal. And then also, I talked about it earlier, intentional time. So be intentional about the time that you want to invest into every single relationship. Define the relationship and define the time that you will invest to it, and be intentional about investing into it. Any relationship that you don't invest your time into will naturally die. There are people that drift apart just because they were not intentional about maintaining that communication. And then there are some that, they invested the time in calling, staying in contact, whether that was via text message, connecting, once in a while, whether that's quarterly or semi-annually or whatever the case might be. And those relationships are relationships that thrive. So make sure that you're intentional about the time that you invest into your relationship with your partner, your spouse, your children, your family, and your friends. And then the relationship goal that you can set for yourself, and this is particularly important for someone that is healing from a heartbreak, set a goal about, healing from that unresolved conflict. There are many people that have been through several situations, relationship trauma or relationship drama, and they may not yet have recovered. I want you to know that you can set a goal to heal from it, because you need to release the pain. You need to set yourself free from that conflict and from that bitterness. It's not something that you want to take into 2026. So for singles, when I talk about relationship goals, make sure that your relationship goal is not one that you're setting, about rushing into marriage, or setting a timeline that, by October of 2026 or June or December, whatever the case is, whatever timeline you've got. Make sure that you're not setting the goals based on timeline, right? The goals should truly be about, what you will do, whether it's creating those healthy boundaries or whatever personal goals you want to set. Just make sure that it's not one about rushing in, right? You can set goals about, your emotional health, your emotional well-being, clarity and discernment. Those are things that will certainly help you to build a thriving and a strong relationship in 2026, right? So remember, what does not get planned does not get protected. So you want to plan your relationship goals so that way you can protect them for 2026. All right, the third shift that you need to make is becoming what you are praying for, right? So this particular shift will require honesty. So, and this, I'm not sure that this is just for singles, but I will start with the singles, right? So oftentimes, as singles, you put up a list and you say, God, this is what I want. I want like a woman that is this, or I want a man that is this. And you've got a checklist. And, as you meet people, you're checking the box and all of that, or you're kind of going, yeah, they don't meet this, requirement, and they don't meet that and all of that. So what's really important is to make sure that what you're praying for is a version of who you've already become. So you can't pray for healthy love when you remain unhealthy. You can't pray for, a person that has, a good character or has great attitude, or that is competent in a particular area when you're lacking in those areas. When you lack good character, you lack good manners, you lack, great attitude, it doesn't work that way. So you have to be a version of who you're praying for or who you're believing God for. So we need to ask God to, first and foremost, help us to grow and to become a better version, right, of who we were, so we can be prepared for the person that we are believing God for. Because what you don't prepare yourself for, even when you receive it, you won't be able to manage it. You won't be able to sustain, that relationship. So it's very important that you look up to God to prepare you, so that way you can connect with the person that you desire. And there are questions that you can, ask yourself, right? If you desire commitment, then you have to be consistent, right? You can't ask for commitment when you are not consistent, because when you give commitment, you're able to receive commitment from the other person. And then if you desire peace, you have to ask yourself, am I emotionally regulated to be able to welcome peace into my life? So if you're emotionally unstable, even when you come in contact with someone who is peaceful, they will not be able to sustain, or they will not be able to thrive in that environment with you, because it's kind of like chaos mixed with peace. The two don't go together, right? It's kind of like oil and water. They don't mix very well. So you have to be emotionally regulated. You have to have like an emotional well-being or state of mind for you to welcome someone that is peace. And then if you desire growth, you have to ask yourself, what am I changing, right? How am I growing? Or in what areas am I growing? And start working towards that. So the third shift that you need to make is becoming a version of the person that you're believing God for, or preparing yourself for that person. So when God slows you down at times, what God's doing in that moment is that God is preparing you for what's ahead. So the shift that you need to be prepared to make in 2026 is a shift of intentional growth, working on yourself, developing yourself, asking yourself tough questions, difficult questions. What areas do I need to grow in? What areas do I need to thrive in? And making sure that you're working, in those areas. And then the fourth shift that you need to make is the shift of sacrifice and intentional love. So love costs something. Love will either cost you your comfort, it will cost you your ego, or it will cost you your pride, but love will definitely cost you something. It can be different for different people. There is a cost for love, and you have to be able to make the sacrifice. Any relationship where there is no sacrifice, I can guarantee you that there is no love. I'll repeat that. Any relationship where there's no sacrifice, then there is no love. God loves us so much that he sacrificed his only son, Jesus, for our redemption. That is love. That's an act of love, right? And so in every relationship, there has to be sacrifice. There has to be compromise. My husband and I and the kids, we're having kind of like a conversation yesterday and talking about brotherly love and brotherly affection. And, my husband gave an example, and he said that, brotherly love and brotherly affection is when you are doing something that you would ordinarily not do, but out of compassion, out of love, out of the kindness of your heart, you do it. And the example he gave is, if a friend calls you and says, I'm stuck, in the deepest part of town and it's snowing, it's like a blizzard, right? It is only love that would put you in the car and cause you to drive down to where your friend is and actually, pick your friend up. And that's really what we need to look at, right? So relationship is not about give and take. At times it might be about giving, but it needs to be reciprocal as well, right? So when you think about the sacrifice and intentional love that you need to give and receive in 2026, it's about that sacrifice of love, right? So sometimes the greatest, act of love is just working on, the very thing that your spouse has even asked you to change, right? I know for myself, there are certain things that my husband has asked me to change, and he's been drumming it like throughout 2025. And one of the things, I've just kind of jotted down is, this is what I've been hearing from my husband over and over again. And I'm going to have to start changing it. Like, these are things that I need to start doing to make the change, right? And sacrifice is not suffering. It's actually an intentional choice to make a change. It's an intentional desire to say, I'm going to kill this, this fleshly desire, or kill this, this satisfaction that comes from me doing this in exchange of something else, right? In exchange of what would be usually beneficial to another person, right? So for single, sacrifice may just mean walking away from what feels familiar and saying, you know what, this is not healthy. I want to focus on what God has in store for me, right? And then if you're a couple, sacrifice might just be, you saying, you know what, I actually enjoy doing this, but my spouse, my partner does not like it, so I'm going to let go of it. And that's a shift that needs to be made, in 2026, is the shift of sacrifice. Because like I said, what you protect today, right, determines the joy that you will enjoy tomorrow. So if you're willing to sacrifice for temporary pain, then you will be able to enjoy the greater gain in the future. And then the fifth shift that you need to make, this is a very big one and is very important, particularly for couples, but pretty much just for anyone as well, is pursuing alignment in 2026. Regardless of the type of relationship you are in, alignment is very important. Now, you can't carry misalignment into a new season. And you might ask, what is alignment? Alignment is moving in the same direction. So whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you're dating or you're healing from a heartbreak, or you're just, focusing on building healthy relationships around you, you need to ensure that every relationship is aligned to your goal. Every relationship is aligned to your vision. Every relationship is aligned to your destiny and in pursuit of your purpose. Don't take misalignment into the new year. For singles, there might be some, friendship and relationships that you have around you that you need to sever because it is not aligned with where you're going into in 2026. For couples, I think it's really important that you sit down and have this deep, honest conversation and say, where are we going? Because if, like I said, if two hearts are going in separate direction, they are easily divided. But when they're moving in the same direction, that is the reason why one will chase 1,000, but the two of them moving together in the same direction will chase 10,000. So ask yourself, where are we going? If you're single, you need to ask yourself, who's walking with me into 2026, right? Who's actually going with me into 2026? That relationship that you might have been, kind of thinking about and pondering on, are we together? Are we not together? What's going on and all of that? Is this a situationship and all of that? I think it's important for you to define it, clearly define it. If the other person's not defining that relationship for you, you define the relationship and say, you know what, this is not aligned with my relationship goals for 2026. And as such, I am going to sever it. And even for friendship, right? Look at those friendships that you have around you and ask yourself, are these friends stretching me or are these friends keeping me stuck? Because there are some friends that will take you nowhere. Right? Remember, we talked about, the friends that you have around you will determine the quality of your life. So reassess your friends, right? Doesn't mean that you have to dump all your friends. No, compartmentalize, each of your friend, right? Like put each of them into the different boxes. You have to be able to say, this is the friends, for this, and these are the friends for this, and these are the friends for this. But you can't just have friends just kind of floating in and out of your life. You must be able to say, this is, the friends for the season, these are friends for a lifetime, and these are friends for a moment. But either way, it's very important that you surround yourselves with friends that will stretch you in 2026. 2026 is a new season. It is a new opportunity for you to make a change, and you don't want to be around anyone that will keep you stuck in the same position. Okay, so very important that you stop dragging misaligned relationships into a new year, like, excuse me. So don't drag, misaligned relationships into the new year. When you think about people that fly, oftentimes you see luggages around and you see people carrying excess luggage or, extra carry-on bag. And then you get to the, boarding gate and they tell you, sorry, this bag can't go in, right? It's excess luggage. You have to check it in, but you can't fly with it. And then, you have people kind of going through, and trying to figure out, okay, what do I take out? What can I check in and all of that? I think that's what you need to do before you get into 2026 when it comes to your relationship. Reassess your relationship. Not everyone's going to get on board with you. in 2026, and make sure that any relationship that is misaligned with your vision, your goals, and your destiny, that they are checked in. They're kind of checked into a different box, right? And that they do not get on board with you. So unity and alignment in 2026 is very important. It is a decision that you need to make. So before you set your 2026 goals, pause and fix this first. First, prioritize your relationships. Second, set relational goals. Healthy, communication, setting healthy boundaries, making sure that you're setting goals about, intentional love, setting goals about your presence and your availability, and then become a version of what you're praying for. Number 4, choose intentional love. And number 5, make sure that you enter 2026 with all the relationships aligned, right? So a new year doesn't, automatically mean that it is a new life. But when you make intentional shifts, it actually means that you will experience a new in 2026. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and you can drop in the chat, or you can send me a private message later. But if this conversation blessed you, I want you to go ahead and I want you to share it with someone that you're building with, or someone that you're in a relationship with, or you can share it with your friends. You can go ahead and you can save it and revisit this conversation again. And what I pray for is, I pray that God will help us, not just to desire better relationships in 2026, but to become better people, and to, that this would, bring us to a place of clarity, that the relationships that we enter into will be more aligned, and that, we will have the courage to grow in Jesus' name. Amen. So just want to thank you again for joining me. If you have any questions, please go ahead and drop your questions. Feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's going to be a wonderful year in 2026. I look forward to, building strong and great relationships with, different circles of, people from different circles of life, building a stronger relationship in my family, with my husband, with my children. And I hope that you do too. All right. Until next time, we will see next year. And I want to say Happy New Year to you. I wish you a great new year. I wish you a new year where you will experience tremendous, growth. You will experience clarity in every decision that you make. All right. Take care. Until next time. Have a good day.